I'm Danny, and it is officially the new year. So since it is the end of the year, I figured I'd do my yearly wrap up. So I'm going to go over with you my top 15 books of 2015, and I'm going to do this from least favorite to most favorite. So I'm going to start with my number 15 and work my way to my number 1. So let's get started. The first book is Making Her His by Lucy Perrox. This is about a girl who has a mysterious past and she undergoes a sexual abuse when she's about 16, I think. And her stepbrother grow pretty close as she's younger, and as she gets older, the stepbrother starts getting feelings for her. Now this was definitely a surprising book. I expected this book to be just basically smut, but this one was actually very good. I could actually feel the emotions. I think I gave this, I don't remember what star rating I gave this, but I know I really did enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to reading more from this author. Next I have The Fox Between the Bare Sheets, and this is by Janica Snow, or Janica Snow, I don't know how you want to pronounce her name, but her spelling is right there. And so this is about shapeshifters, as I'm sure you can imagine. She's a fox, he's a bear, and I believe this is book 1 in the Sweetwater series. I really did like this book. It was my first introduction into the series, and while I've read Janica Snow's biker series, this is her first out of her shifter books I read, and I really did enjoy this one. Next I have Wake by Amanda Hawkins. Now this book was awesome. It was one of the first mermaid books I actually really enjoyed, other than the original Grimm, I think it's the Grimm's fairy tale of the Little Mermaid, which is very dark. This book wasn't as dark. It was more lighthearted than that story, but it still had its dark moments, and I really enjoyed this one so much. Next I have Cruel Beauty by Rosamund Hodge. Now this book is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, but it is not quite the same as the story. Instead of the beast being under a curse, being turned into a beast by, I think it is an old witch, the beast is actually a demon lord. And this book probably would have been higher up on my list, but the last few chapters were so weird and came out of nowhere. It seemed like even though her state of mind was one thing, the next second it was something completely different. Like she went from loving him to, well, I'm not gonna spoil it for you. And so it was very weird. So while I would make this higher up on my list, the ending was just too weird for me too. Next I have Ravish Her Completely by Janica Snow, but this is another first for her. This is more the historical side of her writing, and I really did love this one. This one is about I don't know if you can call him a Viking, although that's the closest description I can think of. In his time and age, he was a really big man, and this is from a time where a lot of men were pretty much muscle, but he is like the biggest man, and the whole village is intimidated by him, and because when he was a little kid he killed his parents, the whole town is afraid of him, so he pretty much lives out in recluse on his own while the whole town fears him. And then suddenly she pops up out of nowhere, and he thinks, finally someone for me to be with. And while she wasn't so willing in the beginning to be with him, like she fought him even though she was very much attracted to him, which I think is a lot more realistic than most of the Viking books that I've read, because it's usually like the girl slightly fights but not really, and then eventually she just gives in. She actually really fought to get away from him. She even ran for help quite a few times, but the people pretty much, since they considered her his woman, they just pretty much turned her back on her. And one time when she tried into the village for help, they almost killed her. But I really did enjoy this book, and I wish there were more books about their life, but unfortunately this is a standalone. Next I have Sunset Beach Sizzle by Carol Burnside. I received this for free from the author for an honest review, and this book was so much better than I thought it would be. I think by the time I started my booktube channel I had already read this book, so I'm not sure if I ever actually did a review on it. I know I did a review on my original channel, but not on this channel. And so, but this book was so good. It was again one of the first contemporary I read. It was about a woman who works for her ex-husband, and she knows that if he finds out that she's in a relationship with someone else, she'll most likely fire that person. And since that person does work with her, her husband can fire him. But it was so good, and I truly had no idea where the story was going at first. I thought it would be your typical two people go off, they have an affair, and eventually they get together and the husband just has to accept it. But it wasn't that easy. But it was so good. I think I gave this a 4-star rating. But it was just so good, and I think maybe in the new year I might pick up more from this author. Next I have Owned by the Dom by Sam Cursett. Now this book is truly, I've read a lot of Dom submissive books, but this one was truly unique. Like normally it's the Dom lures the shy girl in and tries to convince her to enter his lifestyle, or maybe the girl's already interested in the lifestyle and she finally goes to a club to try and really try it. But then eventually the girl gets scared and she kind of runs away from the guy and he comes after her, or maybe she'll come back on her own. Depends. But this was the actual first one where she was the one trying to convince him to pursue the relationship. And it was so unique. I think this is book 3 in its series, and I definitely want to read the previous books before I continue on. But it was so good, and I am looking forward to reading more from this author. Next I have The Outlaw's Obsession, and this is also by Janet Snow. This was the first book I read from her biker series, and I really liked it. Dominating men, danger, fights. I've always kind of been interested in biker books, but all the previous ones I read before this were just pretty much just smut. This was the only one I read with an actual good storyline that didn't just focus on the smutty bits. And I really love this. I think at this point I've read I believe I've read 3 other from this series, and I enjoyed them just as much. Probably just not as much, probably just a teeny bit less, but I really did enjoy them, and especially love this book. It was so unique and different. Next I have Beloved Forever by Kit Turnstile, and this is a vampire book. This is about a woman who meets this guy at, I believe it was a circus, and she knows he looks familiar but she can't place where. Only after he kidnaps her and bites her does she find out that he believes that she is the reincarnation of his past love that he has lost multiple times before. And I really love reincarnation books. I don't know if you can tell, I read only a few of them, but they're so rare, and some of them aren't done so well, but this one was done so well. As she slowly started remembering things, she kind of became a little more resistant towards him, but at the same time she slowly started opening up to him, and finally when she remembered her last life, oh, it was the best romantic ending ever, and I really enjoyed this. I wish there were more from this series, but unfortunately this is all standalone. Okay, those were my favorite ebooks of the year. Now moving on to the physical books. The Goddess Test and Goddess Interrupted. I am including these as one book, and this series was so good, so unique. I thought I knew where the story was going in certain parts, and I even thought I knew who the killer was at the end, but it just was not the person I thought it would be, and I enjoyed this so much. And if this author ever comes out with more Greek mythology books, I am picking them up. Next I have Throne of Glass by Sarah J Maas. And I started this series just a little before the middle of the year, and I was so hesitant to start it. Now, I saw lots of people on BookTube were loving it, and I was more of a paranormal person. I really didn't read fantasy. Actually, I had never read a fantasy before this book, and so from going from paranormal to no fantasy to high fantasy, I was really skeptical, especially with the blurb at the top of the book that people who love Game of Thrones will love this book. I really didn't like the Game of Thrones books, although I did like the TV show, so I was very skeptical going into this, but I loved it. I loved it so much. I gave this, I believe, a 4-star rating, I think I gave this a 4-star rating, and I was so eager to pick up the next book, although I was also nervous because I have this thing about series. I don't know if it's just me or if it's just book in general, but I'll usually like the first book, it'll be pretty good, and then the second book will drop, and sometimes if I continue on, depending on the book, the third book may pick up, or it could drop even more. If I continue on after the second book and the third book drops, I just drop the series altogether. Next I have Heir of Fire, the 3rd book in the Throne of Glass series, and as I said, I was real nervous about going into book 2, and it did drop a little bit for me, but I knew to expect that because I knew that the way the first book had ended, there had to be another romance in the second book, which I was right. And towards the middle, from the beginning about the middle of the book, I wasn't quite sure if I'd continue on, but once that big death in book 2 happened, I knew I was going to continue on, and I'm so happy I did. This one was a bit slower paced, like you got more to the day-to-day life, but it was so worth it. It was so good. I loved it so much, and there was so much more world building and character building in this book, and I just loved it. Next I have A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas. This is the first book in the Court of Thorns and Roses series. The second book, I believe, is coming out in March next year, and I'm so looking forward to that one. But this book was so good. I knew it was a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and again, I was kind of skeptical on that because I I had already read Cruel Beauty and it didn't end the way I thought it would, so I was really nervous going into this one. But again, I already loved Sarah J Maas's Throne of Glass series, so I really wanted to pick this one up, and I hoped it would be as fantastic as I hoped it would be, and it was better than I hoped it would be. There was a lot more romance in this than there was in Throne of Glass. Like, Throne of Glass is mostly action with a little bit of romance, and this was romance with some pretty good action, and it was so good. My book 2 of the year is the final book in the Mortal Instruments series, and that is City of Heavenly Fire. Beautiful cover, beautiful book, fantastic series. If you like urban fantasy and action and a little bit of romance and an eclectic cast of characters, this series you will love, and this is definitely my favorite book of the series. It was the perfect finale to a fantastic series. Some things happened that I did not expect. Other things happened that I expected, but in different ways than I expected. And it was perfect. And I cannot wait for the continuation of this series in the Dark Artifices that comes out, I think, May or March of next year. And we've reached the finale. My #1 book. There was no contest. There was absolutely no contest. There wasn't even another book in my mind that could be #1. And that is Queen of Shadows. This book was beyond fantastic. It was everything I hoped for and more. Things I knew were gonna happen, and they were fantastic. Things I never thought would happen, things I hoped would happen, and there was so much in this book, and there's just no words to describe my feelings, but 50-star rating, and I am so excited for book 5. So looking forward to seeing where the series is gonna go now. But it's gonna be torture because I don't think it comes out until next September. That is my yearly wrap up, and I will see you guys in the new year.